There are forces in life that block money not because we are lazy, not because we lack skill, but because something deeper is out of alignment. Many people work hard, pray hard, and still feel stuck financially. The problem is often not visible. It is hidden beliefs, hidden fears, hidden spiritual blocks. Most people believe that money problems begin in the bank account, the job market, or the economy, but in reality, financial struggle almost always begins much deeper, in the mind and in the soul. Hidden money blocks are rarely visible on the surface. A person may appear hardworking, intelligent, talented, and even spiritually connected, yet still experience constant financial resistance. This is because money responds not only to action, but to inner alignment. When the inner world is conflicted, fearful, or burdened with limiting beliefs, money flow becomes restricted without the person consciously realizing why. From an early age, beliefs about money are absorbed silently. A child hears statements like money is hard to earn, rich people are greedy, we can't afford that, or money changes people. These phrases may sound harmless, but over time they settle into the subconscious and become unquestioned truths. Later in life, when opportunities appear, the subconscious reacts faster than logic. A person may hesitate, procrastinate, undervalue themselves, or sabotage progress, not because they are incapable, but because a hidden belief is protecting them from an imagined danger associated with money. The soul also carries emotional imprints connected to financial pain. Past failures, debts, betrayals, or periods of lack leave scars. Even when circumstances improve, the soul remembers the pain and unconsciously tries to avoid repeating it. This creates a push and pull effect, consciously wanting abundance while subconsciously fearing it. That internal contradiction is one of the strongest hidden money blocks there is. Spiritual traditions teach that money is not just physical currency, it is energy, responsibility, and trust. When a person feels unworthy, guilty, or afraid of responsibility, the soul resists receiving. Many people unknowingly believe that having more will make them less spiritual, less humble, or more exposed to judgment. Others fear that success will separate them from family, friends, or their identity. These fears remain unspoken, yet they quietly shape financial reality. This is why effort alone does not always produce results. Two people can work equally hard, yet experience very different outcomes. One is internally aligned, calm, and open. The other is tense, fearful, and conflicted. Money flows more easily toward the one whose inner world is settled. Not because they are luckier, but because they are not blocking themselves. Psalms address this hidden layer directly. King David did not write psalms for surface problems alone. He wrote them for the inner battles of the human soul. When a psalm is read slowly and intentionally, it bypasses the analytical mind and speaks directly to the subconscious. The rhythm, faith, and certainty of the words gently dissolve inner resistance. They replace fear with trust, guilt with permission, and scarcity with calm assurance. When someone reads, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not lack," the statement does something powerful. It challenges the identity of lack that many people have unknowingly accepted. It tells the soul that survival is not its burden alone. It releases the pressure to control everything, and when pressure leaves, flow begins. Hidden money blocks thrive on tension, self-doubt, and inner noise. Stillness weakens them, faith dissolves them, awareness exposes them. That is why even 60 seconds of sincere psalm reading can create noticeable shifts. In that moment, the soul is reminded that it is supported, guided, and allowed to receive. The nervous system calms, the mind softens, and the subconscious becomes receptive to new outcomes. This does not mean money appears instantly or magically. It means resistance starts to fade. Decisions become clearer. Confidence strengthens. Opportunities are noticed instead of ignored. Self-sabotage loses its grip. Over time, these small inner shifts compound into real, world results, it is important to understand that removing hidden money blocks is not about becoming obsessed with wealth. It is about restoring balance. When money is no longer feared or idolized, it can take its proper place as a tool rather than a threat. Psalms help restore that balance by reconnecting the person to trust, humility, and purpose. Many people are surprised when financial improvement begins after inner work rather than external hustle. They realize that what was blocking them was never a lack of ability, but a lack of alignment. Once the soul feels safe, money no longer needs to be resisted. In conclusion, hidden money blocks begin in the mind and the soul because money responds to inner beliefs long before it responds to external actions. Fear, guilt, unworthiness, and subconscious programming quietly shape financial outcomes. Psalms work not by force, but by alignment. They calm the inner world, replace scarcity with trust, and gently remove resistance that effort alone cannot overcome. When the soul is aligned, money no longer has obstacles to fight against. It flows naturally, steadily, and with purpose. Many people approach spiritual practices with the hope of instant results, and when it comes to money, this expectation becomes even stronger. They want a quick fix, a guaranteed outcome, or a formula that forces wealth to appear. This mindset is exactly why it is important to understand that Psalms are not magic spells. They are not tools to manipulate outcomes or control results. Instead, they function as instruments of alignment, gently bringing a person back into harmony with faith, trust, and divine order. When alignment is restored, money can flow naturally without struggle. Magic implies control without responsibility. It suggests that words alone can override inner resistance, ethical behavior, and emotional readiness. Psalms operate in the opposite way. They do not bypass the inner world, they transform it. When a person reads a psalm, they are not commanding wealth to arrive. They are declaring trust in God's guidance and timing. This shift, from control to trust, is where true change begins. Misalignment often shows up as tension. A person may desire financial success, but internally feel anxious, impatient, or desperate. Desperation sends a powerful message of lack. It signals that the person believes resources are scarce and must be forced into existence. Money does not respond well to this energy. It gravitates toward clarity, patience, and calm confidence. Psalms cultivate these states by reminding the soul that provision does not come from panic, but from alignment with a higher order. When King David wrote Psalms, he did so from lived experience. He faced poverty, exile, betrayal, and uncertainty, yet his words are filled with trust rather than fear. This is what makes Psalms so powerful. They teach the soul how to remain aligned even before circumstances change. Reading them trains the mind to rest in faith instead of obsessing over outcomes. Alignment also involves releasing the need to know how everything will work out. Many money blocks exist because people demand certainty before taking action. They want proof, guarantees, and visible signs before they relax. Psalms reverse this process. They invite trust first, and clarity follows later. When a person accepts that they do not need to control every detail, mental resistance loosens and creativity opens. Ideas begin to flow, intuition sharpens, decisions feel lighter and more confident. Another critical aspect of alignment is ethical comfort. Some individuals subconsciously associate money with compromise, corruption, or loss of integrity. This creates an inner conflict, wanting financial growth while fearing moral decline. Psalms resolve this tension by reconnecting money with purpose and righteousness. They remind the reader that abundance can coexist with humility, generosity, and spiritual depth. When this conflict is resolved, the soul no longer resists prosperity. Alignment does not eliminate effort, it refines it. A misaligned person works harder but moves slower. An aligned person works with focus and efficiency. Psalms help recalibrate intention so that actions are guided rather than scattered. Instead of chasing every opportunity, a person begins to recognize which paths are truly meant for them. This discernment prevents wasted energy and attracts more meaningful financial progress. One of the most subtle money blocks is impatience. When results do not appear immediately, doubt enters. Doubt weakens faith, and weakened faith disrupts alignment. Psalms teach endurance without bitterness. They normalize waiting without surrendering trust. This emotional stability keeps the person aligned long enough for results to materialize. Reading a psalm for 60 seconds may seem simple, but simplicity is often where alignment is restored. In that minute, the mind steps out of survival mode. The nervous system calms, the heart softens, the person remembers that they are supported, guided, and not alone. This remembrance changes how they think, speak, and act afterward. Those changes ripple outward into financial reality. It is also important to understand that alignment is cumulative. One reading may create relief. Repeated reading creates transformation. Over time, the words of the psalm become internal dialogue. They replace inner criticism with reassurance and fear with patience. When this happens, money blocks dissolve not through force, but through irrelevance. They lose their grip because the person no longer operates from the same inner state. Alignment through psalms also restores gratitude. Gratitude is not passive acceptance. It is recognition of existing provision. When a person acknowledges what they already have, their sense of lack diminishes. This emotional shift makes them more receptive to new blessings. Money flows toward appreciation because appreciation signals readiness to manage and respect it. In conclusion, psalms are spiritual alignment, not magic, because they do not force wealth to appear, but prepare the soul to receive it. They replace desperation with trust, control with surrender, and fear with calm assurance. By restoring inner harmony, psalms remove the resistance that blocks financial flow. When alignment is achieved, money no longer needs to be chased or feared. It arrives as a natural extension of a soul that is grounded, grateful, and in tune with divine order. Words are not neutral. They carry intention, emotion, and belief, and when spoken repeatedly, they shape both the inner world of a person and the external reality they experience. This is why words spoken with faith have the power to activate blessing. Throughout history, people have understood that speech is creative. In spiritual tradition, the world itself is described as being brought into existence through words. When a person speaks with belief rather than doubt, those words begin to influence the subconscious, the nervous system, and ultimately behavior and outcomes. Psalms are a concentrated form of this power because they were written with deep faith, clarity, and divine trust. Many people speak constantly, yet rarely speak intentionally. Daily language is often filled with complaints, fear, and limitation. Statements like "I'm always struggling," "money never stays with me," or "things never work out" may be said casually, but they reinforce internal narratives of lack. Over time, these narratives become identity. Once lack becomes an identity, the mind unconsciously looks for evidence to confirm it. Opportunities are ignored, risks feel threatening, and success feels unfamiliar or unsafe. In this way, careless words quietly block blessing. When psalms are spoken with faith, they interrupt this pattern. They introduce a new language into the mind, one rooted in trust, strength, and assurance. King David's words are not hesitant or apologetic. They are confident declarations, even in moments of hardship. When a person speaks these words aloud, they temporarily step into that same posture of confidence. Even if doubt exists at first, repetition begins to soften it. Faith-filled words also regulate emotion. Fear tightens the body and narrows perception. Faith relaxes the body and expands awareness. When someone reads a psalm slowly and attentively, their breathing steadies, their thoughts slow, and their emotional state shifts. This shift is not imaginary. It affects how the brain processes information and how the person responds to challenges. In a calmer state, solutions become visible. In a fearful state, Even small obstacles appear overwhelming. Another important aspect of spoken words is self-permission. Many hidden money blocks exist because people do not feel allowed to succeed. They may feel unworthy, guilty, or afraid of surpassing others. When a psalm declares divine support and provision, it gives the soul permission to receive. The words remind the listener that blessing is not stolen or selfish, but guided and purposeful. This sense of permission removes inner resistance that effort alone cannot overcome. Words spoken with faith also create consistency. Motivation rises and falls, but spoken declarations reinforce direction even when emotions fluctuate. When someone repeatedly affirms trust and provision through psalms, they create a stable inner framework. This stability supports disciplined action. Instead of acting impulsively or reactively, the person moves with intention. Financial decisions become less emotional and more grounded. It is important to understand that faith-filled speech is not denial of reality. Psalms do not ignore difficulty. They confront it with trust. King David often acknowledged fear, danger, and uncertainty, yet he refused to let those experiences define the outcome. This balance is what makes Psalms effective. They validate struggle without surrendering to it. When spoken aloud, they teach the mind how to hold both awareness and hope at the same time. Over time, words spoken with faith rewire self-talk. The inner voice becomes less critical and more supportive. This change affects how a person negotiates, prices their work, asks for opportunities, and responds to setbacks. Confidence grows not from arrogance, but from alignment. People who trust themselves and their path tend to attract trust from others. This trust opens doors in business, employment, and collaboration. The 60-second practice of reading a psalm is powerful because it compresses intentional speech into a focused window. For 1 minute, the person chooses words consciously rather than habitually. This interruption breaks cycles of negative self-talk. With consistency, the positive language begins to carry over into everyday speech. The person becomes more mindful of how they describe their life, their finances, and their future. Faith-filled words also create patience. Impatience often leads to poor financial choices driven by fear or urgency. When a person regularly speaks words of trust, they become more comfortable waiting for the right opportunity instead of forcing the wrong one. This discernment protects them from losses and aligns them with sustainable growth. It is also worth noting that words spoken with faith influence relationships. How a person speaks about money affects how others perceive them. Calm, confident language inspires confidence. Desperate or fearful language creates hesitation. By reshaping speech through psalms, a person naturally presents themselves as more stable and trustworthy, which is essential for financial advancement. In conclusion, words spoken with faith activate blessing because they reshape belief, regulate emotion, and guide behavior. Psalms provide a language of trust that replaces fear-based narratives and dissolves hidden resistance. When spoken intentionally, they grant permission to receive, foster patience, and build inner stability. Over time, this alignment between speech, belief, and action opens the way for financial flow that is steady, ethical, and purposeful. Time itself is not what creates change, focus does. A person can spend years repeating the same thoughts and patterns without progress, yet experience a powerful shift in a short moment of deep attention. This is why 60 seconds of focused intention can break years of hidden blockage. Money blocks are not always strong because they are true. They are strong because they are repeated unconsciously. When attention is applied with clarity and purpose, those repetitions are interrupted, and the pattern begins to weaken. Most of the mind's activity runs on autopilot. Thoughts about money, worth, and survival cycle continuously in the background. These thoughts are rarely questioned, Over time, they become habits of perception. A person may instantly assume that an opportunity will fail, that success is risky, or that abundance is meant for others. These assumptions feel natural, but they are learned responses. 60 seconds of focused psalm reading introduces a new pattern into this automatic system. Focus is powerful because it unifies the mind. Normally, attention is scattered between worries, memories, and future fears. When a person commits to 1 minute of undivided focus, mental noise begins to settle. The brain shifts from reactive thinking to receptive awareness. In this state, new information can be absorbed more deeply. This is why focused prayer or reading has a different effect than distracted repetition. When someone reads a psalm with full attention, they temporarily step out of survival mode. Survival mode is dominated by urgency and fear. It narrows perception and reinforces scarcity. Focused stillness signals safety to the nervous system. When the body feels safe, the mind becomes flexible. Flexibility allows old beliefs to be questioned and released. This is where hidden blocks begin to dissolve. Another reason 60 seconds can be so impactful is that it creates a clear boundary. The mind resists vague commitments like "I'll work on myself someday." A defined time frame feels manageable. It lowers resistance and invites sincerity. Knowing that the practice will last only 1 minute encourages full presence rather than avoidance. Within that minute, sincerity often emerges naturally. Consistency multiplies this effect. 1 focused minute repeated daily creates a new rhythm. The mind begins to anticipate the stillness. Over time, this anticipation itself becomes calming. The practice stops feeling like effort and starts feeling like refuge. As calm becomes familiar, fear loses its dominance. Money blocks that relied on anxiety and tension begin to fade. Focused attention also sharpens awareness. After reading a psalm attentively, a person becomes more conscious of their thoughts and reactions. They may notice self-doubt arising and recognize it as a pattern rather than a truth. This awareness creates choice. Instead of reacting automatically, the person can respond intentionally. Choice is freedom, and freedom is essential for financial growth. 60 seconds of focus also realigns intention. Many people say they want abundance, but their attention is consumed by lack. Where attention goes, energy follows. When attention is intentionally placed on trust, provision, and calm assurance, the inner environment shifts. This shift influences how the person speaks, acts, and decides throughout the day. It is important to understand that breaking a block does not mean eliminating all challenges. It means removing resistance. Challenges still exist, but they no longer feel paralyzing. The person approaches them with clarity instead of panic. This change in approach often leads to better outcomes, even in the same external conditions. The simplicity of the 60-second practice is also its strength. Complexity often becomes a form of avoidance. People postpone change because they believe it requires dramatic effort. A short, focused practice removes this excuse. It proves that transformation begins with attention, not intensity. Over time, the accumulated effect of focused minutes becomes significant. The mind learns to return to stillness more easily. Emotional reactions soften. Confidence grows quietly. These internal shifts create fertile ground for financial opportunities to take root. Money flows toward clarity and steadiness because they signal reliability. In conclusion, 60 seconds of focus can break years of blockage because focus interrupts unconscious repetition. It calms the nervous system, unifies the mind, and creates awareness where patterns once operated invisibly. Through consistent, attentive psalm reading, fear-based habits lose their grip, intention realigns, and inner resistance dissolves. Change does not come from time alone, but from the quality of attention placed within it. Money responds not only to effort or intelligence, but to emotional state. One of the most overlooked truths about financial flow is that calmness attracts money, while panic quietly repels it. This is not a mystical idea alone. It is observable in daily life. When a person is calm, their thinking is clearer, their decisions are wiser, and their behavior inspires trust. When a person is panicked, even if they work harder, their actions become reactive, rushed, and often self-defeating. Panic creates noise, and money does not move well through noise. Panic is rooted in fear of lack. It arises when the mind believes resources are scarce and time is running out. In this state, the nervous system shifts into survival mode. Survival mode narrows perception. Instead of seeing multiple possibilities, the mind fixates on immediate threats. This leads to poor financial choices, accepting unfavorable deals, underselling value, overspending to relieve stress, or avoiding opportunities out of fear of failure. None of these behaviors come from lack of ability, they come from lack of calm. Calmness, on the other hand, signals safety. When the nervous system feels safe, higher reasoning becomes accessible. Creativity, planning, patience, and discernment all depend on a calm internal environment. A calm person can delay gratification, evaluate options objectively, and take calculated risks. These qualities are essential for sustainable financial growth. Money flows toward people who can manage it without panic because stability attracts opportunity. Psalms are powerful because they restore calm at a deep level. When someone reads a psalm slowly, especially in moments of anxiety, the rhythm of the words and the certainty of faith soothe the inner system. The breath deepens, the heart rate steadies, thoughts slow down. This physical shift has mental consequences. The person becomes less reactive and more present. In this state, fear loses its urgency. Many hidden money blocks are actually fear responses that have been rehearsed for years. A person may not even realize how tense they become when thinking about finances. That tension communicates insecurity to the subconscious. The subconscious, in turn, seeks to protect the person by avoiding risk or clinging to what feels safe, even if safe means staying stuck. Calmness interrupts this loop. It tells the subconscious that it is safe to move forward. Panic also distorts perception of time. When someone is anxious about money, everything feels urgent. Bills feel overwhelming. Delays feel catastrophic. Opportunities feel like they must be seized immediately or lost forever. This false urgency leads to mistakes. Calmness restores a realistic sense of time. It allows a person to wait, to negotiate, to prepare, and to act at the right moment rather than the fastest one. Another important aspect of calmness is self-trust. Panic often arises when a person does not trust themselves to handle uncertainty. Calmness grows when trust is restored. Psalms reinforce this trust by reminding the reader that they are not navigating life alone. This reassurance reduces the emotional weight carried by the individual. When responsibility feels shared rather than crushing, decision-making improves. Calmness also affects how others respond to us. In business, employment, and financial relationships, people intuitively sense emotional states. A calm person appears confident and reliable. A panicked person, even unconsciously, may signal instability. Opportunities often flow toward those who seem steady under pressure. Psalms help cultivate this steadiness from within rather than forcing it externally. It is important to clarify that calmness is not passivity. It does not mean ignoring problems or avoiding action. Calmness is engaged awareness without emotional overload. A calm person still works, plans, and pursues goals, but without the frantic energy that leads to burnout or self-sabotage. This balanced action is far more effective than anxious overexertion. Over time, repeated calm responses retrain the nervous system. What once triggered panic begins to feel manageable. Financial challenges no longer dominate emotional life. This emotional freedom creates space for growth. Ideas emerge, confidence strengthens, resilience builds. These qualities attract money because they support responsible use and expansion of resources. Psalms are particularly effective because they combine calmness with meaning. Relaxation techniques alone may soothe the body, but psalms soothe both body and soul. They address existential fear, reminding the reader that their worth is not defined by temporary circumstances. This deeper reassurance is what allows calmness to last beyond the moment. In conclusion, calmness attracts money because it creates clarity, stability, and trust, while panic repels it by distorting perception and driving reactive behavior. Hidden money blocks often survive on anxiety and urgency. Psalms dissolve these blocks by restoring inner peace and emotional balance. When calm becomes the default state, decisions improve, opportunities align, and money flows more naturally. Financial growth is not only a matter of doing more, but of being calm enough to do what truly matters. Gratitude is one of the most underestimated forces in removing hidden money blocks, yet it is one of the most powerful. Many people believe gratitude is something you practice after success arrives, but spiritually and psychologically, it works the other way around. Gratitude unlocks what fear has closed. Where fear contracts the mind and soul, gratitude expands them. Where fear says there is not enough, gratitude calmly affirms there is already provision. This shift alone can dissolve resistance that years of effort could not overcome. Fear and gratitude cannot occupy the same space at the same time. Fear focuses on loss, lack, and uncertainty. It constantly scans for what is missing or what could go wrong. Gratitude redirects attention to what is present, working, and supportive. When attention shifts, the inner environment changes. And money, which responds strongly to inner environment, follows that change. Hidden money blocks are often rooted in fear-based memories. Past experiences of financial stress, humiliation, or failure teach the mind to stay alert and defensive. Even when circumstances improve, the body and subconscious remember the fear. This creates a state of constant vigilance. Vigilance feels like responsibility, but in reality, it is mistrust. Gratitude gently dissolves this mistrust by reminding the system that survival has already been achieved many times before. When a person practices gratitude, especially during psalm reading, they are telling their subconscious, "We are safe enough to appreciate." This message is powerful. Safety is the foundation of receiving. If the inner system does not feel safe, it will block expansion no matter how strong the desire for money may be. Gratitude creates safety without denying reality. It does not say problems do not exist. It says they are not the only truth. Another hidden money block is the fear of loss. Some people subconsciously resist having more because they fear losing it later. This fear creates an unconscious ceiling on income and success. Gratitude neutralizes this fear by anchoring the person in the present moment. When appreciation is practiced now, the mind stops obsessing over future loss. This presence allows abundance to grow without being strangled by anxiety. Gratitude also transforms the relationship with effort. Fear-driven effort is exhausting. It feels like pushing against an invisible wall. Gratitude-driven effort feels purposeful and lighter. A grateful person still works hard, but their work is fueled by appreciation rather than desperation. This changes how energy is invested. Instead of scattered effort, focus increases. Instead of burnout, consistency develops. These qualities naturally support financial growth. Psalms amplify gratitude because they frame life through divine provision. When someone reads words that acknowledge guidance, protection, and sustenance, gratitude arises organically. It is no longer forced or artificial. The person remembers moments of support they may have overlooked. This remembrance softens resentment and self-pity, both of which are silent money blockers. Gratitude also removes comparison, which is another major source of financial dissatisfaction. Fear thrives on comparison. It says, "Others have more, so I have less." Gratitude brings the focus back to one's own path. When comparison fades, clarity returns. Decisions become aligned with personal values rather than external pressure. This alignment leads to better financial choices and long-term stability. It is important to understand that gratitude does not mean settling for less. It means stabilizing the foundation so growth can occur without fear. A person who is grateful is not passive, they are grounded. From that grounded state, ambition becomes healthy rather than compulsive. Goals are pursued with patience rather than urgency. This patience prevents costly mistakes and attracts sustainable opportunities. Over time, gratitude reshapes identity. Instead of seeing oneself as someone who is behind or struggling, the person begins to see themselves as supported and capable. Identity drives behavior. A person who feels supported negotiates better, asks for fair compensation, and invests more wisely. These actions are not forced. They emerge naturally from a grateful self-concept. Gratitude also enhances generosity, which further unlocks flow. When fear dominates, people cling tightly to what they have. When gratitude grows, generosity feels safe. Giving, whether through charity, kindness, or service, signals abundance to the subconscious. It says, "There is enough to share." This signal weakens scarcity programming and opens channels for receiving more. The practice of gratitude does not require dramatic gestures. Even acknowledging breath, time, skills, or small provisions during psalm reading is enough to shift inner orientation. Over time, these small acknowledgments compound. Fear loses its authority, the nervous system relaxes, the mind becomes clearer. Opportunities that once went unnoticed become visible. In conclusion, gratitude unlocks what fear has closed because it restores safety, presence, and trust within the mind and soul. Hidden money blocks thrive on fear of lack, loss, and unworthiness. Gratitude dissolves these fears by affirming existing provision and support. Through Psalms, gratitude becomes deeper and more meaningful, reshaping identity and behavior. When fear releases its grip, resistance fades, and financial flow can move freely and sustainably. Consistency is what transforms belief into lived reality. Many people experience moments of inspiration, brief surges of faith, or emotional breakthroughs, yet return to the same patterns shortly afterward. This happens because insight without consistency fades. Faith becomes powerful when it is practiced repeatedly, especially in small, sustainable ways. Consistency turns intention into habit, and habit into identity. When it comes to financial flow, this process is essential because money responds more to who a person is being consistently than to what they do occasionally. Hidden money blocks often survive because they are reinforced daily. Scarcity thoughts, fear-based reactions, and limiting self-talk repeat quietly in the background of life. One powerful moment of faith can weaken these patterns, but consistent practice is what replaces them. Daily psalm reading creates a steady counter-pattern. Over time, faith-based language and trust-oriented thinking become the new default. Consistency builds trust within the self. Many people struggle financially not because they lack ability, but because they do not trust themselves to follow through. Inconsistent effort creates internal doubt. When a person commits to a simple daily practice and honors it, self-trust grows. This self-trust translates directly into financial behavior. Decisions become firmer, boundaries become clearer, confidence strengthens without force. Small, consistent actions are also less threatening to the subconscious. Large, dramatic changes trigger resistance because they feel unsafe. A daily 60-second practice feels manageable. The subconscious does not need to defend against it. Over time, this gentle repetition allows deep beliefs to shift without triggering fear. This is why consistency is more effective than intensity when removing long-standing blocks. Consistency also stabilizes emotion. Financial challenges often cause emotional swings, hope one day, discouragement the next. These swings disrupt momentum. A consistent spiritual practice acts as an anchor. Regardless of external circumstances, the person returns to the same grounding ritual. This emotional stability supports clearer thinking and better long-term planning. Through consistency, faith becomes embodied rather than theoretical. Instead of believing in abundance only when things are going well, the person practices trust even during uncertainty. This embodiment changes how challenges are perceived. Obstacles become temporary rather than defining. This perspective prevents panic-driven decisions that often lead to financial loss. Consistency also compounds results. Each day of alignment builds on the previous one. The changes may be subtle at first, slightly calmer reactions, slightly more optimistic thinking, slightly better focus. Over weeks and months, these small shifts accumulate into noticeable transformation. Opportunities align more naturally. Effort feels more effective. Resistance diminishes. Another powerful effect of consistency is clarity. When the mind is regularly calmed and realigned, intuition becomes clearer. A person begins to sense which opportunities to pursue and which to decline. This discernment saves time, energy, and money. It prevents distractions and helps direct effort toward what truly matters. Consistency also reinforces patience. Financial growth rarely happens overnight. Inconsistent faith leads to discouragement when results are delayed. Consistent practice normalizes waiting. It teaches the nervous system that progress can be steady and gradual. This patience protects the person from risky shortcuts and impulsive decisions. Over time, consistency reshapes identity. The person no longer sees themselves as someone who occasionally tries to improve, but as someone who is committed to alignment. Identity drives behavior. A person who identifies as disciplined, grounded, and faithful naturally acts in ways that support financial stability and growth. Consistency also deepens gratitude. Repeated reflection on trust and provision trains the mind to notice positive patterns. This awareness reinforces optimism and resilience. When setbacks occur, they are met with perspective rather than despair. This resilience is essential for long-term success. It is important to understand that consistency does not mean perfection. Missing a day does not undo progress. What matters is returning to the practice without guilt. Guilt itself can become a block. Gentle persistence is the goal. This approach keeps the practice sustainable and supportive rather than burdensome. In conclusion, consistency turns faith into financial flow by replacing fear-based habits with trust-based ones. Daily alignment through simple practices like psalm reading reshapes identity, stabilizes emotion, and builds self-trust. Over time, these internal shifts remove resistance and allow money to flow with ease and purpose. Faith becomes not just something believed, but something lived, and lived faith creates lasting change.